Tonight, Debby takes aim at Georgia and South Carolina after slamming Florida. Communities are bracing for potentially historic flooding. The impact will last for days up and down the eastern seaboard, disrupting thousands of flights and the worst day for stocks in nearly 2 years. What's behind the meltdown? But first, Debby smashing into Florida's Big Bend and turning deadly. Hurricane-force winds, driving rain, and a powerful storm surge knocking down trees and power lines, leaving hundreds of thousands without electricity. A 13-year-old boy died when a tree fell on his home. A big rig crashing into a canal, killing the driver. First responders making high water rescues. Thousands of delays and cancellations impacting the East Coast and beyond. But the worst may be yet to come. Debby is now heading north slowly, expected to linger over Georgia and South Carolina. Up to 30 inches of rain is possible in some low-lying coastal areas. Savannah and Charleston under a high-risk flood threat, the highest possible. And here in the Northeast, a rare tornado slices through Buffalo, ripping roofs off buildings and knocking out power. Faith Abubey and Ginger Zee are in the storm zone. Stock markets around the world take a beating, the Dow plunging more than 1,000 points amid fears of a slumping U.S. economy and the possibility of a recession. Rebecca Jarvis on what may lie ahead. A landmark ruling from a federal judge designating Google a monopoly. What's next for the online search giant? Vice President Kamala Harris nears a decision on a running mate after meeting with top contenders. What we know about the timing and Harris's thinking. Selena Wang reports from the White House. News just coming in, several U.S. troops are injured in a suspected rocket attack on a coalition base in Iraq as American diplomats scramble to limit any retaliatory strikes on Israel following the assassinations of top Hamas and Hezbollah commanders. Soufi-Burridge with late reporting from Israel. Robert Kennedy Jr.'s new admission and the fallout. Why he says he left a dead bear in New York Central Park. Jonathan Carl reports. The near miss in Sacramento. A small plane crash lands into a golf course pro shop, almost hitting a golfer.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday night. I'm Lindsay Davis in for David. We begin with deadly tropical storm Debby slamming the southeast at this hour. States of emergency along the coast. Parts of Georgia and South Carolina are preparing for what could be historic flooding. Hundreds of thousands of customers in Florida now without power. The storm made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane near Steinhatchee, Florida, with winds of up to 80 miles per hour. Debby then slowing to a tropical storm as it cuts a path along the state's west coast, pushing its way toward the Carolinas. This is the first hurricane to hit Florida this season, dumping more than a foot of rain in some parts. At least 4 people killed, including 2 children. The storm is also blamed for a horrific accident in Tampa, an 18-wheeler losing control, careening into a canal. Savannah, Georgia, in the path of what could be a once-in-a-thousand-year rainfall event, the potential for as much as 30 inches of rain. The storm causing thousands of flight cancellations and delays along the East Coast. The warning tonight that the worst is still to come. Ginger Zee is standing by. ABC's Faith Abubey leads us off from Florida.
Tonight, life-threatening storm surge, powerful winds, and the potential for feet of rain. Debby leaving death and destruction in its wake. The system gaining strength before slamming ashore in Florida's Big Bend around 7 a.m. A Category 1 hurricane packing sustained winds of 80 miles an hour.
We're about 20 miles from the coast, and we're now in the eye wall of Hurricane Debby. We're just now starting to see this finally come in from the southeast with all of these bands and stinging rain.
More than a foot of rain in spots already. A flash flood emergency declared northwest of Gainesville.
And you can see members of the Florida National Guard in high water rescue vehicles going into neighborhoods like this that are flooded to rescue homeowners.
We met Kristen Mallet. She evacuated with her family as their neighborhood started to flood.
Are you surprised by what you were seeing?
Yes, because I've never seen anything like this before.
Major flooding in Sarasota.
As you can see right behind me, there's an active rescue happening as we speak. This is one of many that we've seen since we got here just about half an hour ago.
In Levy County on Florida's Big Bend, a 13-year-old boy killed inside a mobile home by a falling tree.
The young man was asleep in his bedroom, and that's where the major impact was.
Near Tampa, dive teams working in dangerous conditions, pulling a semi-truck from a canal after it slid off Interstate 75 around 2:30 in the morning, recovering the body of the 64-year-old driver. More than 300,000 Florida customers losing power at one point and flight cancellations piling up across the country. Our Trevor Alt at LaGuardia.
So this storm, along with separate storms in the Midwest and the Northeast, have caused thousands of flight cancellations back-to-back days during a really busy stretch of travel. It's mainly impacting the East Coast, but this has ripple effects all over the country.
Debby now crawling into Georgia and South Carolina, where it'll sit and dump rain for days. In Savannah, residents racing to prepare. Authorities putting a curfew in effect starting tonight.
This type of rain hovering over us, coming with the intensity that they tell us that it's coming, it's going to catch a whole lot of people by surprise.
And Debby has moved out, but there are a number of communities just like this one still dealing with significant flooding. The power is out in this neighborhood and nearly the entire county, and first responders are going door to door in some areas to check on residents. Lindsay.
Hats off to those first responders. Faith, thank you. Millions in the South are now facing the potential for historic flooding. Let's get right to ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Zee, in Georgia for us. And Ginger, it sounds like the slowdown of this storm is what's really going to be problematic.
There's no question. We saw it for days in advance on the computer models, Lindsay, and we're just getting pounded here in Savannah. So much is going on. We've had several tornado warnings in Savannah proper already. We could see more of those as we've got tornado watches all the way up to Charleston. We're also in a flash flood warning because we've already seen 2 to 5 inches of rain here ahead of the actual storm, and we're going to end up with 12 hours ahead of us with more 2 to 3 inch per hour rainfall rates, by the way. Here's what happens and the timing and why this is a problem. Tomorrow morning, Savannah's just starting to release from the heaviest rains, but Charleston's getting that onshore flow, meaning that you're going to plug up the rivers and tributaries with that 2 to 4 feet of surge, and then on top of it, it won't allow the rain that falls to release into the ocean. So that combo, look at that, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington getting it Tuesday night through Wednesday. Then on Thursday, it wraps back around now and hits Savannah again. It's going to hang out way too long here, and that's why we have the potentially historic and, yes, catastrophic flood problems, not just at the coast. We keep saying these towns like Savannah or Hilton Head, but a little bit inland as well. Inland flooding problem, Lindsay.
Just relentless rain there. Ginger, thanks so much. We move on now to the stock market, suffering one of its worst days in years. A global sell-off triggered by new concerns of a possible recession for the U.S. economy. A rocky day across the board. The Dow Jones today lost more than 1,000 points, closing at 38,703 points. The Nasdaq falling 576 points. And take a look at the S&P 500, suffering its worst day in 2 years, down 160 points. What this could mean for the Federal Reserve and a likely rate cut next month. Here's ABC's chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis.
Tonight, a stock market sell-off. The worst day on Wall Street in nearly 2 years. Investors rattled by a growing list of concerns, from high interest rates to disappointing reports on jobs and manufacturing to the threat of war in the Middle East.
All of these things created a perfect storm, and you had everybody just wanting to sell everything they had. So across the board, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
The heavy selling started overnight. Japan's market down more than 12%, its worst day since Black Monday in 1987. U.S. stocks plunging out of the gate. The S&P 500 closing down 3%, with some of the hardest hit high-performing companies in tech and artificial intelligence.
We've had 18 months, 2 years of a market that has rallied incredibly. So when you finally have the market reversing, it is not a time for people to be panicking. I'm not in panic mode, and I don't feel panic here.
Lindsay, the meltdown could mean the Fed takes the extremely rare step of cutting interest rates before its next meeting in September, or cutting them more aggressively in September, bringing down borrowing costs on things like your credit card in order to avoid a recession. Lindsay?
And switching gears, Rebecca, we know there's another major financial story breaking tonight. What does this mean for Google now that a judge has ruled it a monopoly?
This is a major blow for Google, Lindsay. It's a landmark case that also could impact other big tech companies facing similar suits. That judge has now ruled that Google did maintain a monopoly over its search business. The judge will now decide whether to break up parts of Google or how the company operates as part of its business. In a statement, Google telling ABC News tonight it will appeal the decision. Lindsay.
Rebecca Jarvis for us. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Now to the race for the White House and the growing speculation over Vice President Kamala Harris's choice for running mate. She's expected to appear on stage with her pick in Philadelphia tomorrow night. Her campaign says the final decision has not yet been made. With several top contenders on the list, it may be coming down to the wire. Here's ABC's Selena Wang.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris just hours away from making one of the biggest decisions of her career. Harris closing in on her choice for running mate, meeting at her Washington, D.C. home with the leading contenders. Arizona Senator and retired astronaut Mark Kelly, the husband of Gabby Giffords, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a retired school teacher and 6-term congressman.
Hi, Governor. Anything on the Veep stakes yet?
I got nothing for you, man.
And popular first-term Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, a former prosecutor. Shapiro emerging as a favorite, with Pennsylvania a must-win state. But some in the party voicing concerns over his support for Israel and taxpayer-funded private school vouchers. Harris forced to make this critical decision at warp speed. She's only been a candidate for 2 weeks herself. Sources tell ABC News the new pair will debut in front of a crowd of more than 10,000 people tomorrow night in Philadelphia, kicking off a blitz through battleground states this week, where she's seen a boost in the polls. In a new interview, Donald Trump saying any of Harris's possible VP picks would be a better president than she would.
I think virtually every one of them is considered better, smarter, would be a better president than her. But we can't allow her to be president. She's going to destroy our country.
I'm told, Lindsay, that as we speak, Vice President Harris still has not chosen her running mate. Everything about her campaign is a sprint. The weekend meetings she had with those leading contenders, I'm told, were so important because she's looking for someone who she has chemistry with, who she trusts, and critically, who can help her win. Lindsay.
Selena Wang from the White House for us. Thanks so much, Selena. Now to breaking developments in the Middle East. The U.S. Defense Department confirms several American personnel were injured during a suspected rocket attack on an airbase in Iraq. It comes as the U.S. works behind the scenes trying to convince Iran not to retaliate against Israel. ABC's Soufi-Burridge is in Israel.
Tonight, several U.S. personnel injured when their base in Iraq was targeted by multiple missiles. The strike stoking fears the Middle East is on the brink of a wider war. The region on edge as Iran promises it will take revenge on Israel at any moment after the assassination in Iran of a top Hamas leader. The U.S. now in diplomatic overdrive.
Escalation is not in anyone's interests. It will only lead to more conflict, more violence, more insecurity.
Today, President Biden speaking with Jordan's King Abdullah as the Pentagon dispatches more destroyers and an extra squadron of fighter jets to defend Israeli airspace. The US coaxing Arab allies to rejoin that defensive coalition which downed hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones fired at Israel in April. Sources tell ABC News the White House is facing steep hurdles because many partners see Israel's actions last week as, quote, unnecessarily provocative.
And Lindsay, President Biden and Vice President Harris in the Situation Room this afternoon briefed on U.S. military efforts to defend Israel and that attack on a U.S. base in Iraq and discussing steps to respond to any attack against U.S. personnel. Lindsay?
Tom, thank you. Tonight, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential campaign is taking a truly unexpected turn. In a story that made headlines here in New York a decade ago, he now admits he was the one who left a dead bear cub in Central Park. Here's ABC's Jonathan Carr.
A decade ago, a Central Park mystery baffled New Yorkers and captured headlines across the country.
A baby bear found dead in Central Park. Now the question everyone wants answered, how did the cub get there?
Now we know. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., shown here posing with his fingers inside the bear's bloody mouth in a photo obtained by The New Yorker, says he found the cub on the side of the road in upstate New York back in 2014.
I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear.
In a videotaped confession, the independent presidential candidate recounts the strange tale to comedian Roseanne Barr, after learning The New Yorker planned to include the story in a profile on Kennedy's life that was published today. Kennedy says that after a day of falcon hunting, he had to rush to a dinner at a fancy steakhouse in Brooklyn and then had to catch a flight. Anyway, he He says he didn't have time to take the bear home, so instead he left it in Central Park with an old bicycle so that it looked like it had been killed by the bike.
I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea.
In the video, he says he was shocked to see how much attention the discovery of the dead bear with the bicycle got the next day.
I was worried because my friends were all over that bike.
Kennedy's standing in the polls has dropped. He's at less than 6% in the 538 polling average, but his campaign says he'll be on the ballot in at least 42 states. And that could be just enough to determine who takes the White House in November. It's a strange story, but Kennedy doesn't seem the least bit concerned about it, and it appears he's not in legal jeopardy either. The New York State Department of Conservation Services said that the bear died from blunt force trauma consistent with being hit by a car, and the charges cannot be brought. Lindsay?
Unusual tale there, John. Thank you. There is late-breaking news to report tonight, and for details on what is a developing story, we go to ABC's Juju Chang.
Lindsay, thank you. We have breaking news from California tonight. A fast-moving wildfire east of Los Angeles. A frantic effort underway to save homes.
These are the dozen or so homes that are in an imminent threat right now. You can see more homes in the way of this fire.
Multiple residences already engulfed by the Edge Hill fire in San Bernardino.
This entire neighborhood south of Ridgeline Drive now ordered to evacuate.
At least 200 firefighters are responding to the scene. Flames can be seen racing across the hillside through dry brush. The area already under an excessive heat warning today. Temperatures forecast to reach 105 degrees. Multiple active fires are now burning across the state of California. Lindsay?
Juju, thank you. When we come back, the incredibly close call. A plane crash lands at a golf course in Northern California, narrowly missing a golfer, and then touching moments of athletes coming together at the Summer Games. Next tonight, a close call on a California golf course. A small plane crash landing into the pro shop at Hagen Oaks in Sacramento, nearly hitting a man. The pilot walked away with only a minor cut on his hand. One golf course official said it was a miracle. No one was hurt. When we come back, a rare twister touches down in Buffalo, New York. To the index, a rare event in Buffalo, New York. Authorities say a tornado touched down in the city this afternoon, ripping roofs off of buildings, trees, traffic lights, and utility poles down, leaving some residents without power and damaging cars. When we come back, the moments you may not have seen, the fierce competitors coming together.
ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, sponsored by Vivgard Hytrulo and Vivgard.
Finally tonight, sometimes the toughest competitors can also be the closest of comrades. Tonight, some medal-worthy moments of sportsmanship at the Olympics. That moment, gymnast Simone Biles winning silver in the floor exercise. U.S.'s Jordan Childs winning bronze. Both women then bowing at the podium today to Brazil's Rebeca Andrade, who won gold. It was just the right thing to do, Biles said later. She's queen. In swimming, U.S. gold medalist Katie Ledecky inviting U.S. bronze medalist Paige Madden up to the first-place podium spot for the national anthem after competing in the women's 800-meter freestyle final. Haley Batten, an Olympic mountain biker for Team USA, winning silver at the finish line, hugging, congratulating her rivals from France and Sweden, who won gold and bronze. And nations divided but coming together. The North and South Korea mixed doubles table tennis teams on the podium together. North Korea winning silver, South Korea bronze, all smiling, taking selfies, along with China's team, who won gold. Inspiring moments of sportsmanship, giving fans an extra reason to cheer. Love to see that. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Lindsay Davis for David and all of us here. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. Until then, have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir America's most watched newscast.